Okay, it is Frito, and I'm smiling right now if you're watching this on video because I just did something that is so appropriate for the topic I wanted to do today. And the topic is overthinking and how overthinking can really get in the way sometimes of doing what you want to do. And I'm just going to pull the curtain back a little bit because I just overthought myself into a very bad situation where I want everything to be perfect. And we're going to talk about that today. And what I did is I just executed a 15-minute episode. I overthought it, and I was so concerned about how I look on the video. And, you know, I don't want the headphone hair for the rest of the day. I didn't want to put headphones on to listen to the way I sounded. And I did a 15-minute podcast without turning my microphone on. And I had no idea my microphone was not on until I ended the podcast, and it was great. I mean, it's probably the best podcast I've ever done. And I hit stop on the recording software, and there was nothing there. And I looked down on my mixing board. All the microphones were on mute. So I just did a 15-minute episode with no sound. So anyways, I'm re-recording it, and we're going to talk about overthinking. And that's what I just did. I overthought the process because I was so concerned about everything else, I forgot to turn the damn microphone on. So overthinking can have several negative effects on the creative process. That's one of them. But the main one that I've noticed in 6-7 years of doing these podcasts with my clients is that overthinking on the extreme can keep people from actually even starting a podcast that they want to start because they want to overthink it to death, and they don't want to start until they get things completely perfect and until they have the perfect plan and the perfect idea. And I'm going to tell you this, it's never going to be perfect. You can't wait to have the perfect plan and the perfect idea because it's just not going to happen. You'll be waiting a lifetime. You'll never get started. There's a difference between planning and overthinking, and I think you know that difference. You don't want to get caught in that overthinking process. You want to plan, but one of the main things you want to plan for is plan to pivot. Plan to just go with the flow. Plan to be creative. And you can't force the creative process. I've got over 30 years in radio and podcasts, and that becomes very clear pretty quickly that you can't force that creative process. You can't think your way into being creative. You're going to be creative if you just let it happen. You can't shut it down because you're overthinking it. Let that creativity happen. Don't stress over it. Don't, get anxiety over it. Just let it happen. It's going to happen. The more comfortable you get behind the microphone, hey, even if it's off, you can get comfortable behind it. You're going to let that creativity flow. It's going to really help you out. It's going to increase your energy and your motivation. I'll tell you the other thing that overthinking does. Overthinking will sap your energy. It will sap your motivation because you'll overthink something to death. And by the time you think you come up with a plan, you're just too tired to execute it. So don't let it sap you. Don't let it sap that energy. And definitely don't let it get in the way of doing what you want to do. We're going to tackle 4 myths about overthinking right now that I think are very common. They're common with my clients. They're common with radio talk show hosts, any content provider. I think these myths apply to everyone. Number 1, people think overthinking is necessary for the creative process to succeed. And that's just simply wrong. I just said it. Creativity just happens. Okay? And I think we all are creative. It's just some of us can let it happen easier than other people can. And part of having success with creativity is letting it happen and not forcing it. So overthinking is not necessary for creative success. As a matter of fact, it can really hurt your ability to be creative because you're thinking so hard about having the perfect plan, you miss things that just happen out of the blue. You don't have the ability to pivot to an idea that you may not have thought of before because you weren't prepared to pivot. So just let that creativity happen. Myth number 2, that overthinking is a sign of intelligence. No, planning can be a sign of intelligence. Preparing can be a sign of intelligence, but overthinking is not. Overthinking to me is quite the opposite, because overthinking to me means you don't have the confidence enough in your intelligence to be able to see things as they come at you, to be able to make instantaneous content decisions, to be able to pivot into a direction that you weren't necessarily prepared for. And I'm going to tell you, that's where most of the very creative people are different than the rest of us, is they are able to look at something that's going on right now, right in front of them, that they were not necessarily prepared for, but they're prepared to notice it, and they're prepared to understand that, hey, I may be planning on talking about A, but I'm going to pay attention to B, C, and D. And if those things are more worthy to my audience, I can pivot to B, C, and D, even though they're unknowns right now. That's intelligence. But overthinking is not intelligence. Overthinking can stifle intelligence. Myth number 3, overthinking leads to better decision making. This myth is huge. I see it every single day. People overthink to the point where they can't make a decision. People overthink to the point where they're paralyzed by their overthinking. Don't let that happen. Plan, prepare, but do not overthink. You've been in this situation. Everyone's been in this situation where you overthink something to the point where you just can't make a decision. Don't let that happen. That keeps so many people from doing what they want to do, because the overthinking, it forces them to just shut down. Can't do that. Number 4 is kind of a positive about overthinking. It's a myth out there that overthinking is a personal weakness. I don't even think it's a personal weakness. You've heard me say a lot of bad things about overthinking and the negative impact overthinking can have, but I don't think it's a personal weakness. I think it's something that we need to overcome. I don't necessarily think overthinking is always bad, but what is always bad is your refusal to stop overthinking. Okay? And to me, that makes perfect sense. I hope I'm conveying it to you. Yes, we're all going to overthink things, but we need to know when to put a stop to it. And I don't know if that means that you need to set a deadline. I've done this with clients of mine. I'm going through it right now with a great idea for a podcast that we're developing about first-time home buyers. And we've spent the last week and a half trying to come up with the perfect name for the podcast. And here's the thing. The podcast is a great idea. The content is going to be great. It's a great realtor paired with a great mortgage lender, and they're going to walk you through the first-time homebuyers process. It's a great concept. We need to get started, but we don't have a name for it yet. And I'm about to put a deadline on them to say, look, we need to just settle on a name. We got to quit overthinking it, because literally we're overthinking it to the point now where we should have started recording these episodes weeks ago, but we haven't done that because we need to come up with a name first. And look, we're not going to find the perfect name. It could be the perfect podcast, and we can't let the name of the podcast get in the way of not executing the podcast. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not too close to that issue, to the where it makes sense to me and not to you. But you just can't, it's not a weakness to overthink things, but it's a weakness not to know when you are overthinking it and when you need to stop overthinking it. So overall, my point to you is don't overthink things to the point where, the thought process and the overthinking keeps you from accomplishing your goal. If you want to get a hold of me, it's right there on the bottom of the screen if you're watching the video, www.freedonation.com, or feel free to give me a call, 214-250-1321, 214-250-1321. I love talking to people. I give free consultations, not only because it's good for my business, But I'm going to tell you this. I got plenty of ideas from you, from my clients that come in here, and they've got some great creative ideas, and it really helps me think about new ways I can help other clients as well. So feel free to give me a call, and I hope I get to meet you really soon. Thanks.